Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Dynamic Duo podcast with Trusnell and no one? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I am alone today because we're actually going to be talking about some comic books. As you know, we've talked about before, people in the past that have been on the show, or my co-hosts such as Liam. He reads lots of comic books. Kyle reads comic books here and there. And I've really wanted to start talking more about comic books on here because that's why we wanted to start a show of Dynamic Duo on a comic book centric show, just to actually start talking about comic books. But I find it's pretty tough, like considering like Liam has different tastes and I have different tastes, and like if we had a bunch of money, we could just blow. I'm sure we could pick a comic here and there that we could just be like, oh yeah, we'll buy all these five, we'll buy all these 10, read them all and see what we say, and then I I've thought about it, and I've thought about like what should I do for a show about comic books, and we've done a couple specials, and it's been really not bugging me, but I'm thinking how can we incorporate shows more like comic books more into the show because I love them, lots of people love them. Obviously, if you listen to the show, you probably love them, and that's how you either got into or you got into the movies, or you just love the idea of them. Maybe you're trying to get in, like Kyle is, like he's started in the past couple of years. So, yeah, so I may have guests on here and there. Liam Kyle definitely could be on, and it's thing of like if it correlates, if we have certain comic books we very really want to talk about, things like that. But pretty much what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do this one, see if you guys like it. If you like it, maybe I'll continue it month to month. Maybe I'll do it every once in a while, but I definitely want to do it more often. Like I said, whether it's just myself or with Liam, Kyle, and anybody else. I have a good friend Keegan. Hopefully, he's going to be coming down in August. I'd love to talk comics with him because he seems like he's read everything in the past and everything currently. I talk to him and it's just like, oh yeah, read that, and he's fast, you know. And even with comic books, like I'm slow. Like the way I do it usually is, and that's why I think if the show continues, which I guess I don't know what I'm gonna call it, top comic books of whatever the month is. Like I don't want to be too fancy. I want you to know what it is. With me, I usually read them if it's like a big issue. I want to read like with Scott Snyder's Batman run. I really wanted to read that. So anytime Wednesday or Thursday, like I'd read that as soon as possible. If there's issues like that, I'll read as soon as possible. But usually it's kind of on a weekend, or I do a bunch of catching up at the end of the month. To be honest, I'll just that's what I did in what was it, May, June? Yeah, sorry, I'm forgetting which months come in a fucking row. But like yeah, and that's what I did at the end of May. Is just like I had missed so much of X-Men, and I've missed so much of Avengers and things like that, and it was just like it's tough with comics because there's so many that come out. Obviously, it's once a month, but still it can pile up if you like a lot of people. Like just to list some of the ones I'm reading. I'm reading lots of the Rebirths. I'm reading Flash, Wonder Woman, Batman, and obviously Nightwing. I'm very excited for that comes out. I guess this month when I'm recording it. Scott Snyder's new Batman, All-Star Batman's coming out. And then on Marvel, I got Avengers, I got the Ultimates, I got Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Power Man. Got Deadpool, Civil War, like, and those are just Punisher, Moon Knight. Please read Moon Knight. We're not gonna be talking about it today, but Moon Knight is great. I'm gonna probably talk about that next month. But yeah, there's just so many, and it's hard to keep track, and it's hard to just read them weekly because shit comes up, whether it is like podcasting with the GeekVerse or my job or my extra activities that I do or just life or my big bulldog who's just sitting here staring at me right now thinking like, oh, why are you just talking to yourself? Because this is actually my first podcast I've done alone, so sorry if I ramble a bit, but I hope you like the voice because we'll be hearing a bit more of it. Yeah, so I guess what I want to do is I don't know if I'll always keep it to 5, but I'm probably going to keep it to 5 for a month. I always want to do 2 Marvel, 2 DC, and then the last one's something I pick. Maybe it's Dark Horse Comics, maybe it's something like Star Wars. I know it's technically Marvel, but you don't really think about it. I'm not going to talk about any Star Wars today. I was actually thinking about talking about the Han Solo #1 that came out. Because with this cast, I want to start comics that are either big deals, like big events that are going on, like Civil War 2, which we're going to talk about next month. Or issues that are starting out a new storyline, which you'll see later on with what I'm talking about, a big crossover, or like Han Solo #1. I want to start with that, but there's a few other ones I want to talk about. And honestly, I read the first issue, it's great. But with Han Solo, I think I'm going to, because it's only 5-parter, I'm going to wait until all the 5 parts are done and read the first, like all of them, and that's what I want to cover it on this cast. So yeah, that's kind of guidelines of what we'll be talking about today. The reason I want to start off when it's like a new arc or a new issue or something like that is because it's easier for you to jump on. It's hard for me to talk about something in the middle of the story because if you're not reading it, you might not care. You don't want to get spoiled. There's a couple that I will be doing because it's like if they're great comic books, I want to talk about them. And there's ones like Wonder Woman earlier, they won't talk about it. It's a little spoiler, but like I didn't think it was amazing. It didn't blow me away, anything like that. It was a fun read, but like I want to talk about because it's the first one. It's kicking off DC's Rebirth as far as Wonder Woman series go. So I guess we'll just get right into it and talk about it. And and I guess the other thing is too, like I said, I don't know how often I'm going to be doing the show. I think I'd like to do once a month at the end of it or the beginning of every month, talking about 5 or so comics of the past month, so I kind of get a range of reading everything. Like I said, I read a lot at the end of the month. If there's anything you want me to read, let me know. It's easy. Just go to GeekVerse Twitter, go to Facebook Twitter, what the fuck? Our Facebook, GeekVerse Podcast, the network that shoots out all these spin-off shows, and I'll read it. I don't know if it's gonna be on the show. I would definitely shout it out and say thank you, and I'd talk about maybe a little bit. I don't know if I'll be in this top 5 sort of system I have going on, but like I'm always open to reading. Same thing. I'd rather try and read something that's an arc starting or whatnot. Or maybe if it's a series that is that good, like say, read it. Because I know I still haven't read it, but so many people told me the Hawkeye of last year was great. And I just haven't got around to it. I still plan on it. But it's like, and I actually have the first couple issues downloaded on my phone. And unfortunately, that's how I do. I wish I could read physical, but with Kelowna, I live in Kelowna, Canada. And we get the physical comics, but it's usually... you never know. Sometimes you will get them that Wednesday, but very rarely you'll get them the day of, and then other times it's usually just like, it could be a month later. And even though I said I like to read them at the end of the month, there's comics that, like like I said, Scott Snyder's Batman with Civil War, I'm very excited, Civil War 2, stuff like that, that I want to read right away, and it doesn't really help me out. So if I can, I read the physical copies and plus space, but if I usually get physical copies, I like to get it. I will buy it online and then buy like the paperback or everything put together, the whole, like if they do a whole graphic novel collection, like that's usually when I like to buy them, have a physical copy, because if you get a physical copy of a couple and you don't really like them, you don't want to throw them away, but then you don't want to give them away. It's like this awkward thing, so you just hang on to these comics for the rest of your life. I have a huge collection in my grandma's basement from when I was a kid, teenager, of just like got bought for me, this and that. So let's get into it. Let's talk about something. So let's start with Marvel, because I won't spoil it. I'll start with Marvel. So let's start with Marvel. There's a couple that I was thinking about talking about, but then I narrowed it down to 2. And like I said, the 2 I was debating about, might get there eventually, but it's Moon Knight. Definitely gonna talk about that next month. It's just I read the last one. I think that was one that's one that I read right away. I really like what's going on there, but it wasn't exactly fresh in the mind, so I want to read that again and wait for the next month, because then I'll actually take my notes, because I actually take some notes. That's just not just me talking, as you might think. Then the other one was Punisher. I've almost talked about, but not enough happened, or not enough great stuff happened. It's a good one so far, but first one I picked is Daredevil. It's issue 8, and it's the start of a new arc. What is it here? Blind Man's... I think it's Bluff. I'm going to go look, because I put Buff. Yeah, it's definitely Bluff. I don't... Because it's centered around poker. I don't know why I would have said Blind Man Bluff. I digress. But anyway, so issue 8, it's the start of a new arc. I think it'll probably be like a few issues arc, just the way it seems to be going. So far, I've really liked it. I wouldn't say it started a little rocky, the all new, all different Daredevil, but I wasn't necessarily... I guess the first few issues, it didn't necessarily feel like Matt. For some reason, I don't know. Maybe it is just because like it was new writers, or like at least new writers to me. Who's writing this bad boy? Let me see. Charlie Soley. Yeah, I don't know if I've read anything of him, and now with doing this show, I'm definitely taking more notes of writers. Like I have my huge writers, which on the podcast come up, top 5 writers. Stay tuned for that. But I have writers specifically that I'm following, and that's one, like same thing, like he's writing them right now, is Brian Michael Bendis. Like he's one. I don't know if he'd make my top 5. No, he didn't make my top 5, but he's very close, and that's a guy who just puts out quality. So I'll be like, okay, I'll track down him. But some of these newer people. Anyway, and that's the thing with reboots with DC. I know it's not a reboot, but the start over, and same with Marvel. There's lots of new writers getting shots. Lots of writers that I may not have read because they're doing my character. or a character I like, my character. I wish I created the Daredevil character. Not as cool as anything I've probably created. But yeah, the first few issues, it felt like Daredevil, but it didn't. You know, like I was still saying, so I wasn't sure if it was a new writer, if it was a new, getting into a new continuity, this and that, because I couldn't remember the last time I'd been, like I said, the last time I actually read Daredevil continuing was when Brian Michael Bendis, always screwed that name. I always get up the first and middle name screwed up in the middle, but that's when I read it for a while, and then you kind of fall off, and that's what happens sometimes. Some writer takes over you don't like, this or that, and plus things like fall behind. That's the way what's going on with the all new, all different Avengers. I love that, but it was just one time where I was literally 5 issues behind, had them downloaded on my phone. I'm like, okay, I'm reading these right now. It's just, there's so many comics out right now, and so many good comics. Like, I literally say, if you're a comic book fan or you think about, there's a comic out there for you. Don't just read one, and if you don't like it, it's like, I'm not really in this comic thing. Like, there's different ones out there, and that's what I've liked so far about actually Rebirth and All New, All Different, is they all have really different tones and great art style, and that's the thing I'll shout out with this Daredevil series so far. Same thing, that was another thing getting used to it, was the art was a bit different. At first I didn't know if I like it, and now I love it, especially with this issue. I really, really like where it goes, because I guess as far as spoilers, I'm not going to spoil too much about comic books. If I do, I'll let you know, but there's a really, really good fight scene near the end of this comic that has very great art. Like I said, I don't want to spoil it because I want you to go buy it, or like if you've already read it, you know what I'm talking about, so I don't have to go into details. Sometimes I will talk about it if it's a huge plot point, but but anyways, and this isn't much of a spoiler, but it starts with Daredevil. He's pretty much doing the Casino Royale thing. Like, he needs to get information, he needs to find out stuff, and how's he doing that? He's playing poker, Texas Hold'em, he's at a casino, I can't remember, in like Japan or Tokyo, somewhere like that. And anyways, this is a minor spoiler, but he does this really, really cool thing of he's blind, so he can't see his cards, and he says something like he can't fuel it, so he doesn't know what the numbers are and whatnot, like what cards he has. So he says he doesn't need that. All he has to, I think the line is like, I don't need to read cards, I can read people. Something very badass Matt's gonna say. But they jump to other people in the scenes or / panels, and they all have different heartbeats or emotions and stuff like that going on, and it's really cool to see. You can say, that guy's nervous, or that guy, his heartbeat's not moving at all, and like, that person's feeling really anxious, stuff like that. It's a really cool scene, and I really like when they use his powers quite a bit, because that happens a lot with, like, you'd be surprised, but lots of times I feel like people do forget that. They forget about his senses, and he's a great combat fighter, and obviously they just kind of, sometimes I feel like they just chalk it up to be like, his senses let him do some great combat, like, that's fun and all, but it's like, I like when you actually see Matt / Daredevil doing this. Let's see, I put a couple notes here for this one. I just want to shout this one out because I've been enjoying it so far. Daredevil's in my top 10 favorite characters, and I'd say read it. It's a nice change of the pace of, like, most of the comics I'm reading they're in space, there's big superheroes and that, and this is, once again, like, Daredevil's always been talked about, like, the very minor street level stuff, but it's great to see. There's a really, really cool tribute to his dad in one of the panels. I won't spoil it, but very, very cool. I'll drop a mini spoiler. I guess it's a spoiler. If you don't want to hear it all, skip ahead 2 minutes. It ends with, like I said, I'm not going to go into the full thing, but it ends with him seeing that he's going to have a mini crossover with Spider-Man. And that's great for myself, because I'm super biased between those two, because that's how I actually really fell in love with Daredevil, was the animated series. And that episode when Peter Parker is, Kingpin frames him, and he needs a lawyer, Matt Murdock's there, and the Daredevil's there. That was my first, I can't think of the word, but that was the first time that introduced. God, I forgot the word introduced. That was my first time I was introduced to Daredevil, and right away it was like, man, who is this badass? And same with Matt, was fleshed out really well too. So the fact that the next issue, and like I said, I think by that there is maybe gonna be 2, maybe 3. I don't think it's gonna be a big, like, 8 arc issue or anything like that. But that gets me very excited. I love Spider-Man and I love Daredevil, and the team up be great. Like, that's something I'd want as a movie. I know there's Sony and the Netflix TV show, but man, if Daredevil showed up in the Spider-Man movie, that's probably one of the top 5 things I'd want. I love those two pairing. They're good because it's not like a Spider-Man Wolverine pairing. Like, Daredevil and Spider-Man are different, but I feel like they have a very clear path of justice in the law system, you know. So at the end of the day, they might disagree and they have different personalities, but they have the same goal. Where like Wolverine, he might go chop a guy's head off, and Peter might not be okay with that. So, but yeah, that was my first one. Daredevil issue number 8, starting the arc, Blind Man's Bluff. Check it out. Like I said, that's one that's good. It's a jumping on point. If you like Daredevil, if you're interested, get on it. It's good, and then from there you can keep reading. You can go back and read the other ones. They were dealing with the 10 Finger Clan. That was good. Like I said, the first few issues I felt like it was trying to find his footing, and it did really good near the end of that arc, and Elektra came in for a while, so that was good. Moving on. This is one I picked merely for how... And actually, I guess I should go back... I don't know. I guess I could rate them. I don't know. I would give this a 7.5. Good setup to the arc. Lots of cool panels. Really, really, really cool fight scene. Good use of Matt's powers, but nothing blowing away. Like, it was just a really good, solid issue. So that's what I would give that. Daredevil makes an appearance. Deadpool 13. Now, this is one that I was talking about earlier, picking something that's a big event, like a crossover. So when they announced this, I was looking very forward to this. This is Deadpool 13, obviously, so it's his comic, and it was going to be a crossover Daredevil, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage / Power Man. And I was looking forward to this a lot, because those are the ones I've been reading the most out of Marvel. Like that's me. I've read the Ultimates and Avengers and X-Men. Uncanny X-Men I'm skipping up on, or catching up on. But Daredevil, Iron Fist, Deadpool, and then Iron Man. There's too many irons and there's too many men. Power Man / Luke Cage and the all new Wolverine. Those are the 5 that I've been reading the most of. So when they said that I was doing crossover, I was like, great, because I'm already reading them. Not that you need to know, and that's what I was going to say. If you're interested in this comic, you don't need to know the other storylines going on. This is a very one-off, just fun kind of... There's not a road... They don't take a road trip, but it feels very road trippy. You know, it's just a fun comic. And that's what I kind of like. Lots of times crossovers... They have the tendency of being too big, or you need to know all the stuff going in, or you gotta read fucking side issues, and you gotta read... And that can sometimes be good. I'd rather read those most of the time when it... Like the original Civil War, I didn't read all the side issues as it was going on. 1, because I was a kid without allowance, so I couldn't afford it. But 2, just because there's so many, and there's so much stuff going on. I read it when they all put together, and that's great. And same with... I can't remember what Scott Snyder's... Like, I know there's Court of Owls, Night of Owls. Maybe they call it City of Owls. They did one where they put together Nightwing and Batgirl and all that stuff. And that's when I prefer to read them, when they're all together. Usually I just like the main story. But this was refreshing of just like, hey, we're doing a crossover one. It's going to be fun. You don't need to know anything coming in. You don't really need to know anything going out. You know, like it doesn't affect the path that all these guys are going on. It's a fun thing. So... Pretty much, like, this is the plot, and then I won't spoil it too much. I'll say a couple of the highlights, but there's a guy, he needs to be protected. He's Mr. Shirkley. He's been laundering money for criminals. He didn't know it was criminals, so there's this thing of, like, he doesn't want to do anymore, and he owes them money. So, of course, criminals are after him, because you don't want to mess with criminals and take their money. You know, it's pretty self-explanatory. And then, once again, easy setup of, like, okay, these are bad guys, this is what's happening. And then... Deadpool gets dragged along, which if you ever read all different Deadpool, really fun. Deadpool's always fun. It was really good. I really liked the first arc of him doing the... What is it? Mercs for Money. It's great. And then with Madcap, really made me like Madcap, really, as a villain. But anyway, so he gets brought in because I won't spoil it. I think it could have happened in the past. I didn't recall this because there's so many comics out there. But Typhoid Mary propels Deadpool to have a reason to get involved in this, and then shenanigans really ensue. Like I said, there's not too much I want to talk about because I don't want to spoil it, because it's just a fun comic book. It's a fun issue. It's quite long. I think it was like 84 pages or something like that, because it's literally like it's a Deadpool comic, then Daredevil, Iron Fist and Power Man, and then back to Deadpool. And that's the one thing I do like is the two things. One, with each time they went into like that so-called issue, it was always like Deadpool .1 or Daredevil .1. You'd see when you picked it up. But anyways, every time Deadpool gets to a certain like issue of that character, and it goes in, so it starts with Deadpool, then goes in Daredevil, goes Iron Fist, Power Man, and then back to Deadpool. And each with those switches, the art style switches to that character's or those characters' certain art style. And that was really cool because Daredevil has this very almost shell-shaded type of look. Iron Fist and Power Man, to me, are kind of a little cartoony to be a way, but in a good way, like in a fun, very bright, vibrant way. And Deadpool, just really good art. It's kind of, it has a certain look, but nothing like the other two. I feel like those have a bit more of a unique look. So that's really good. And then the second thing is the characters all feel the way they do in the other issues. And that's the thing that you kind of worry sometimes with crossover, and that can happen a lot, where if it's someone else taking it on, and even if it's a person that's writing that character in their own series comes over, you can get lost in the shuffle, and some things don't feel like that character, or they're just saying, and yeah, they have to say stuff that might progress the plot, and it's kind of like, that wouldn't be that guy, or that wouldn't be her, you know? So that's what I liked. It's each character stuck with their morals and stuck with their personality, and I really like that, and it wasn't all just, Deadpool's obviously the most popular out of them, especially with the movie coming out. And at the end of the day, it is a Deadpool issue. And he is the main character, but he doesn't feel like he brings it over. There's many times where it's just like Iron Fist and Power Man, like for 4 panels, and they're talking. You know, it doesn't feel like it just centers around Deadpool. And I like that. And I'm a Deadpool fan, but you want that in a good crossover. So a couple notes I have. Daredevil and Deadpool alone makes you have to read this issue. They have great chemistry, and when I say Daredevil, I should definitely clarify to Matt Murdock. Daredevil and Deadpool do, but there is a scene where, a little spoiler, Deadpool and Mr. Shirkley decide they're going to go to the district attorney, talk to Matt Murdock, figure this all out, and it's great. Like, the amount of jokes he's making at the expense of Matt Murdock is, like, good and bad, because it's kind of cringeworthy, but, like, Matt takes it like a champ, like he doesn't care. But there's just certain things and it's just one line I wrote down. There's so many good lines. But he brings Shirkley over and he's like, I think lawyers have to do a bunch of reading, and maybe we should get one who could see. And it's just like that constantly. And then Matt responds like, I'm sitting right here. And then Deadpool takes out his sword and he says something to the effect of like, are you sure you're blind? And he's like, I'm definitely sure. And then he's like waving his sword in front of Matt Murdock's face, and Matt's like, if you're waving you're not waving your finger in front of my face to see if I'm blind, correct? He's like, more or less. And it's a really good setup. Like I said, it's just me reciting a line, so it's not going to be that funny. The whole dynamic between them is lots of fun, and the dynamic with Deadpool and Daredevil is lots of fun. The dynamic with Deadpool with anybody is kind of fun. You know, like I don't know who you could put Deadpool with and be like, man, that was a real stinker, you know? Said, yeah, good job keeping the characters the same. There's a couple pages / panels when they use the left and the right in big fight scenes with all the 4 characters or a bunch of stuff going on, and that's really cool. Just huge, really nice looking art, stuff going on everywhere, and they just make it all form into one big kind of poster in a way. And then the last thing I'd show that was a little spoilery is the whole time, and like I said, minor spoiler, but the whole time Power Man's kind of like, I hate Deadpool. Like, he's ragging on him, and Iron Fist is like, oh, you know, whatever. Like, Iron Fist, you know, Danny Rad, super cool, super chill. And then later on, throughout the whole day, like, throughout the whole issue, he eventually loses cool. And that's great to see, because he rarely sees Iron Fist. Like I said, he's usually the coolest guy in the room. And then he just blows a gasket, and it's really entertaining. It's just, they did a very, very good job of having lots of fun, keeping the characters the same, and making it a good time. This is one that I've read it twice because I just had lots of fun. The second I put it down, I'm like, man, I'd like to see all those characters cross over again. And that's about it. It's just lots of fun. If I had to rank this, probably be an 8.5. I want to give it, I want it to be an A. And just because it's lots of fun. No, it's not some earth-shattering one. No, it's not maybe one you're going to be talking about for years, but I think that's probably a lie. I think I'm going to be talking about it for a while because I just had lots of fun. And it's a nice, simple read. And this is one easily, too, if you didn't even want... And I hope they do a graphic novel or they do a nice trade paperback, something like that, so because I want to buy this. This is something easily, if you're like, you know what, I like reading, just buying graphic novels, buying big arcs, things like that, or buying something to read, you could buy this and never have to continue. If you want to, great. But if you're like, hey, I don't have the money or I don't want to be getting into comics because it's very much like an addiction and buying them over and over and stuff like that, because this week you'd have to follow 3 different comics. This easily is a standalone. Like, if they didn't have comics running right now, they could have done this. This can just be a fun standalone, and it's a good time, and I like that. So yeah, moving on. We'll get into DC. What do I want to talk about first? We'll get Wonder Woman out of the way. Wonder Woman, number one, no way a bad comic. Very good. I just found it very uneventful, but uneventful in a way that is gonna really pay off down the line. You know, it's one of these, I think we might have talked about too, that he had a problem with some of Scott Snyder's issues. I never did, because I am just a huge fanboy. I love Scott Snyder. But he had a problem with some of his issues that alone, he felt like, okay, like, that was alright, but I didn't really get anything going from it. Like, did I need to read this? Did this need to be here? I disagree with, like, the Wonder Woman. I feel like it does need to be here. But I felt a little similar to that of, like, I read it, I'm like, okay, cool. I like to see where this goes. I'm going to keep it up because I'm trying to read ones that I've not read that much of before, you know, certain characters, which hasn't really done well for me because it's not like I'm replacing other characters. I'm just adding on to the collection. But Wonder Woman, I've read comics here and there. I've read more graphic novels and collections, but it's one of the characters like Aquaman, which I'm not reading right now. I might. It's just one of the characters that I've read more in the Justice League, like together or appearing in Batman comics and stuff like that. So I wanted to get into it. I like the Wonder Woman character. I like Diana, so I want to get into it as now I'm older. I don't regret it. It's good. I just, like I said, it's her trying to find out about her past, trying to find out what's been going on. She feels very lost, obviously, after this whole DC Rebirth thing. At least that's a vibe I get. Almost violated in a way of, like, she doesn't really understand what's going on. The biggest thing I'll have to throw out there was the art I really liked. And it's not anything like, no, you know, I think it's really good. I don't think it's like, oh man, this is the craziest art of all time. But some of the imagery was really, really good. There's one point where she sees, like, it's a little spoiler, but not really. She just sees this mountain of skulls in a certain shape. And it's really cool. And there's stuff like that stuck with me later on. And the stuff for me, not that drags it down, but it's kind of like, man, it's the Steve Trevor stuff. Steve Trevor's fine. I've just never been like, man, I love Steve Trevor. So, like, he's in here quite a bit. I almost would have just liked it to be her solo venture, but I get why he's there. It ends in a good way that makes me interested to see. I'm giving this one, and I'm gonna keep reading it, but I mean, like, for me to be excited for it, I'm probably gonna give it 3 to 4 issues. I think by the third one, even the third one's kind of like this, where we're still more discovering, she's looking into things. If the third one ends with a huge hook, and I'm like, okay, I'm in, and then the fourth one's good, I'm pretty happy with, like, spending money on this, spending time on this. Because, like I said, this comic feels, it's not a bad comic at all. It's a good comic. It just feels very much like it is chapter 1, but it feels very much like this is going to work better when you have the whole story of this arc and you read it together. You're like, oh, that makes sense, and that's good, and this is a good build-up, you know. But when you just read it by itself, it's like you read it 24 pages and you're like, okay, cool, and then you, like, in that way it's sort of forgettable, you know. Like, the art was great, and it's memorable because this was Wonder Woman. I didn't say issue number 1. This came after Rebirth number 1, so I wanted to, all the number 1s mostly I'm getting into. That's why I might get into Aquaman. I just never had a reason other than Justice League Animated to really like or care about Aquaman. I didn't even read the Jeff Johns New 52, which people told me to, and it's just the same thing. Ran out of time, didn't get to. Might do it eventually. But yeah, one read because number 1. Glad I read it. Excited to see where it goes, but nothing amazing. So I think this is one that if you're a Wonder Woman fan, you're going to like it. If you're interested, I think it's worth checking out. If you've never been that much of a fan, like, it depends, because I've never been a huge fan of her solo things, but I read it and I'm interested to keep going. But it's not one I'd be like, man, you have to read. I think at the end of the arc, I'm hoping that I'm going to say, hey, you have to read this, and then go on from there. But I it's not that I wouldn't recommend it, but I would only recommend it depending on your tastes, you know? So, yeah. I think I'd give that a 7, you know? Like I said, I think it's pretty good, very good. Yeah, no, I'd just say pretty good, or just good. I don't know. Some form of good, pretty much. But yeah, a 7, like I said, I don't think it's bad comic, just the first building block in the continuing series. So, jumping over to another issue 1 is Flash, or The Flash 1. Always been a big Flash fan. He's, taking, like, the Bat family out of it and all those villains and whatnot, I'd have to really think. He's probably my second favorite DC hero, to be honest. And the Martian Manhunter's 3, just because as a kid I fucking love Martian Manhunter. And I'm waiting for a DC Rebirth Martian Manhunter. Very badly, so get on it. But yeah, I really like Flash. I've always liked Flash. As a kid, he was super appealing because he's the funny guy and whatnot, and he's speedster. But definitely as time's gone on, especially after Flashpoint Paradox and Jeff Johns, what he did with that, that's when I became a big, and that was when I was younger, like preteen, teen, became a big fan. And yeah, so what did I think about this issue? I'm saying because I have notes and I didn't have them up, and now they're here. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Now I remember this because I accidentally pulled up what was it, the DC Rebirth one. I have the comics in front of me just to kind of give me a little reminder, because some of them, like I said, most of them I read at the end of the month. There's a few I read like a month ago or like 3 weeks ago, and then I did have the notes, but it's still nice to see a couple panels. My biggest thing is that I'll really stress and I really like about this issue is Barry Allen seems like he can't do enough, and I really like that. And obviously this is the effects of DC Rebirth. 10 years have been gone, and he really, I don't know if he feels like it's his fault, but he feels almost a little stupid. And this is my interpretation, just a little stupid or a little let down in himself that he didn't see this, that he didn't, like in the first, spoilers for Rebirth, when he saw Wally for the first, I'd say like 30 seconds to a minute, he didn't even know who he was, and I think he feels very much like Wonder Woman, very violated, and I like that theme going out throughout the thing, that him, Batman in some comics, Wonder Woman, other people refer to DC Rebirth, and obviously they're gonna, but it could have just been like, oh, this big event, and then we're dropping into like the big crossover, and they take on, whoever that evil is, or whoever's screwing with them, like suddenly they forget it and then they pick it back up. It's a theme going throughout, and I really felt that with Flash, is that he felt like he can't, like he stresses the whole comics, like he can't be in all these places at once, he can't do this, he can't do that, and that was really good to see, and it got me invested big time because I'm already invested in Barry Allen, but even more of him feeling like everyone around kind of seems to be like, oh, like it's not your fault, like they don't say that, but there's one scene with Iris, and it's just like she's trying to kind of talk him down and whatnot. Like it's like he is putting so much pressure on himself, and I really like that. Yeah, I won't get into too many spoilers. Yeah, I don't. This is a minor spoiler, or it's a big spoiler, so skip a minute if you don't want to hear. So there's this cop, August, who I'm not too familiar with. I can't remember him exactly. Flash, it's been a while since I started reading. I didn't read New 52. New 52 I did not read that much of, because honestly, I didn't think any of them were that bad, but nothing really grabbed me too much other than Scott Snyder's Batman, and then I started with a few issues, and then just kind of fell off of some stuff. But, so he's hit by the Speed Force, or he's had the Speed Force, or something like that. Seems like he's going to be another Flash. Good setup, good kind of nice, not a twist, but just a good setup for the future to see where he's going to lie. Is this going to be another Flash palling around with him? Is this going to be a villain down the line? Is this some other form of a villain getting through this guy? So, yeah, it was it's the whole issue, I'd say, is a really good setup to what Flash is going to be. And this is one, unlike the Wonder Woman, where I said, like, oh, I'd only recommend it to certain people, whatnot. This one I felt I had a good time with, because there's good action. There's Wonder Woman action too, but only at the end, and I didn't feel like it was cool, but there was action, there's some fun in there, and also I like Barry Allen, so if you like Barry Allen, must buy. And I just really like this. This was maybe my favorite DC of the month, to be honest. I really enjoyed it. And when I say I really enjoyed it, I think it's one of those when you put it down, you're really like, man, I can't wait. Where Wonder Woman I put down, I'm like, oh, I'm excited to see what happens, and when it comes, I'll probably read that at the end of the month. But with Flash, I was like, this is one where I feel like I could be reading the first day or second day it comes out. So I really enjoyed it. I think I'd also give... this is somewhere in the middle. It's like an 8. It's somewhere like, maybe it's like an 8.3. I don't know if it was good enough to be 8.5 because nothing major happened yet, but it was a really solid comic. And like I said, the Deadpool crossover one had an 8.5 because it was just so much fun. There's so much cool characters, a lot of stuff. It's like I say, 8.3. I'm trying to think of like why it's not like a 10, even though I really enjoyed it. It just didn't. I think because of that, nothing too major happened. I feel like the next comic, obviously there was that ending, and that was a big thing. But it's hard to, it's really hard to, and like I debated if I was gonna rate these or not, and I might even drop it eventually. I think I like to rate them to give you preference to how much I like them, but really I don't like to rate it unless it's a whole arc. I'll do it for the show, but it's tough to do single issues because if this thing with August, doesn't pan out, it's kind of like, okay, well, whatever, you know. But I thought it was good characterization. So far, nothing huge happened, just a really good setup. So that's why I'd give it like an 8.3. Yeah, that's about it. And I guess the beginning didn't drag, but it was the first few issues when Bear at the crime scene was kind of like, okay, cool, like nothing, like I wasn't like, oh, couldn't put that down. So that's why I'd give it around 8.3. Finally, this is the one special one, things like that. So we're sticking with DC. Now here is one that people have been waiting for a long time. The Dark Knight, Last Crusade, written by the one and only Frank Miller. Let me pull it up here. And Brian Azzarello. I think that's how you say your name. I'm sorry if it's not. Haven't read too much of his stuff. The one I have read it, I think it kind of seeps in here a bit. It has that Frank Miller flavor, but it is just his Joker. And I remember that came out relatively soon after The Dark Knight had released. Maybe it was more towards when the DVD came out. No, I thought it came out that summer. Either way, I bought it. I've always been a big Joker fan. Batman and Joker are my favorite fictional characters, tied for number one. But I really enjoyed... Oh, Dark Knight's my favorite film. So, like, I was on major hype. And that was around the time I started working and getting an allowance, stuff like that, or one of the two. I had money to spend. I heard about the Joker coming out, thanks to, like, IGN back in the day, or just Joker. And it was a really, really cool, dark take. And it fit with the Ledger thing because it was a semi-realistic take. Art was great. So yeah, Brian Azzarello's Joker. If you have not read that, go read it. It's not even that long. It's probably pretty cheap. Like, it's not a big one, but it's great. It's fantastic. It's definitely one of my favorite Joker stories. And I think it's kind of underrated. I know it was a big thing that summer, but I don't hear a lot of people talk about it, and it's a really good take on Joker. And like I said, it kind of seeps in through here. So if you don't know what this is same thing, like I said. The reason why I'm covering big comics, something that I feel like I can universally talk about because some people might check out, or the majority of people. So it happens before The Dark Knight Returns, obviously a prequel. I think if you're listening to this podcast, we've all read The Dark Knight Returns. If you haven't, go read it. It's one of the greatest Batman stories of all time. I feel like people might feel like I undersell it because it's not my favorite Batman story, and I say that it didn't have the same impact on me, but I have a lot of feeling that was because of the time I grew up. You know, I was born in 1993. I grew up with a much darker Batman, you know, where lots of people, that was the kick. So I grew up in the effect of Frank Miller, and I don't discount any of his work. It just didn't impact me as much, and I don't always know how I take him and him writing his Batman, but I digress. That's a conversation for another day. Either way, he's a great fucking writer. He really is. Like, he is one of a kind. And this was a big one. Had been delayed quite a bit. And I thought they were supposed to... I didn't know if this was going to be just one issue. And I think it is. And I looked at, like, after when it came out to make sure. And I couldn't see anybody saying it was two. But I thought originally it was supposed to be a few issues. So if you haven't read The Dark Knight Returns, go read it. Great. And it is going to spoil some stuff. So this is one I will be talking spoilers. So if you haven't read the Dark Knight Last Crusade, maybe you want to tune out. Thanks for listening, but I do want to talk about this one a little more in depth. We won't spoil every little panel, but there's stuff that I think is worth talking about. So it's a prequel, takes place, it's supposed to be like why Batman stopped being Batman in the events before The Dark Knight Returns. So the very first thing is, I think when you get to The Dark Knight Returns, you see he is old, officially old Batman. This is him getting old, and I like that, where he still has a pep in his step in a way. Like, he's still good at crime fighting and what he does, and he has The Dark Knight Returns, but there's like a different style. But this is where it feels like he's starting to feel the effects of age. He talks about like muscle spasms. I don't think he talks about muscle spasms actually, but like pain, his legs, like he can't stand up at one point because his knees, you know, like it's him starting to get old. There's a great panel of he talks to Robin, kind of shushes him away, shoos him away, and then Alfred has to help him physically walk to the washroom. So it's those signs of it's finally starting to take his toll on him. He still has a little gas in the tank, but it's taking his toll on him. So I like that. You see that going on. There's a Yeah, I'm not gonna break down that plot. There's some stuff I want to leave. I want to just hit on the big points. But there is quite a few, not so much cameos, but if you've read The Dark Knight Returns, the way Two-Face Harvey works in there, there's another rogue from Batman's past that works like that. That is like the villain, and that's not the Joker, somewhere else. And there's a couple other cameos. The plot's kind of decent. It feels very, very similar to the I can't remember the goddamn name of it, but the Batman animated. There's a Batman animated episode. Skip ahead, spoilers for 30 seconds if you don't know who the villain is. That episode with Poison Ivy when has like the retirement home and she's using them for all their money and whatnot. The plot's kind of similar to that. And I'm not saying they fucking ripped that off. I'm just saying that's what you can go on expecting. It's good. That's not the main side I want to touch upon. It's a good thing. That's about it. Yeah, Batman in constant pain. He's very hard to keep up the crime fighting. Like, he deals with that a lot in this one. It is a morality of not only him, but just and like his character in crime fighting and being Batman, but getting old. Like, it feels like these are lots of things that are themes for people that are getting old, like questioning their mortality and things like that. Things that if they feel as important as they used to, if their life's not being fulfilled as much. So it is good that way. It's not just tackling the crime stuff. It just feels like in general he's worried about being older and not being able to be young Bruce Wayne. Joker's great in the story as always. I love him in The Dark Knight Returns. He's very psychotic, very menacing, and that's followed up. And like I say, definitely a combination of Miller and Azzarello. You get to see a bit of it in Returns, but not as much as you do here. He's definitely the standout in this story for me because you get to see him as like a Hannibal Lecter, John Doe-ish type of character, of him really messing with other criminals. I think he's in Arkham in here, should be. But if not, well, actually I don't know. But wherever he is, he's messing with other criminals. And the prime example is one point he tells a story or kind of like a joke or a riddle, and he tells the whole thing and he asks the criminal like what the answer is, and he doesn't tell them. And all of them, I think it is Arkham because they seem insane, so they're going nuts. Like, they have no idea what to do because he won't give them the answer to the story. And he's like, well, you tell me. And they drive him crazy. And that's why, like, he plays a lot of mind games. He's very psychological, very into the psychological torture, I guess I'd say. That's, I guess, my other co-host is my Heisenberg. You done? Yeah? He feels the same way about the Joker. So, yeah, he's good. Don't expect too much of him. He's in... I wouldn't say the right amount because I'll get to that later, but he's in a good portion. One of the biggest things I love about Batman and the Batman universe, my favorite comic book, maybe the romance of all time, is Batman Selina. Obvious reasons. I'm not going to get into that whole thing. We'll do that another day maybe. Maybe we'll count down some top 5 relationships, but they have a great rapport. They have a great chemistry. They have a great understanding of one another. And we have an understanding, too, of the pull they have to one another. To Selina being darker, but wanting this man who could maybe make her not as dark and really loves him but doesn't know she can't, or he loves her in a way but she doesn't know she can really let on, but then she's always flirting with them and whatnot. Like, there's a very fun playfulness but then a deep connection they have. And then Batman, the obvious that it's hard for him to really attach to anybody, and plus she's been a criminal at times. She at this point is, so minor spoilers, given up being Catwoman. They go into that a bit. There's literally a conversation they have in the bed, and she wants Bruce to retire, and it ends with her stressed. So it came out of nowhere, but they're very serious talking about him retiring. And at one point, she's like, "Oh, I'll put on the costume," and he has this like sexual smile. So it's like it's good. It like goes into that sexual chemistry they have, because I think that's kind of how, honestly, the relationship kind of starts, and then it gets deeper to knowing they're very kindred spirits. But it's very a sexual, flirtatious relationship. So, but I like that because it shows how important she is. I've always thought she is. I think she's Bruce's biggest love. And yeah, I like that she's kind of saying, like, this is enough. Like, I've stopped. I don't have the passion for it anymore. Like, she said she wasn't being excited or thrilled doing it anymore. And she's kind of telling him to stop. And he just can't. He doesn't feel... He's not ready to. And he doesn't know if he can. And I'm not sure... Yeah, that brings up here where on... Jason Todd, Robin, is in this. Just so you know, I don't know if I clarified. And like I said, it's going to be spoilers. But he's like, he can't take the mantle up. And throughout the story, and that's my next note, Robin's very violent, as usual as Jason Todd is. It's very... I'll wait till the end, but it's similar to the Death in the Family and themes it played with, and that's one of the reasons why I don't think it's an amazing story, but we'll get into that. Yeah, I talked about Poison Ivy thing. Yeah, no, there's the rest of the stuff I don't want to talk about because it spoils everything. Those were the biggest things, and later on, so Bruce has a conversation with Selena. Same thing about this again, and kind of the same vibe. This is one thing that does make me wonder in Dark Knight Returns. I think it was implied that... I guess they've always been together. No, I guess it was implied that they were together still post that. I just thought maybe they'd have a happier, like, she'd be living with him sort of deal. Maybe a nice trip to Vegas marriage, but maybe Bruce can't do that. And this is the biggest spoiler, so if you don't want to hear the ending of it, you can skip over, like I said, bow out. But it ends with Joker getting out of prison, and then it also ends with Bruce is like, hey, no, Robin, because he's been being violent and he doesn't trust him. Like, no, you're going to stay in tonight. Like, you couldn't handle the Joker alone. Batman gets very damaged. And Jason Todd goes. He's tracking the Joker down, finds him, opens the door up, or is about to open the door and gets beat down. It's implied that he's dead, but some people have taken it as maybe he's not, and Joker's going to twist and turn him. Like I said, I don't think there's another issue coming. If there is, that'd be wonderful. Because the biggest thing with this story is it's really, really good. It's fantastic, but it kind of crumbles near the end, and in the way of not that it dips in quality, but just in the fact of it leaves you wanting more. And you would be like, oh, well, it's a prequel. That's the point, because Dark Knight Returns is your more. But it almost leaves you wanting too much more. It doesn't delve into enough of the fallout of that situation. And like I said, if there's another issue, then great. But it doesn't delve into the fallout of the situation. It's just kind of like, Batman's hurt. He calls it a night, tells Jason not to go. Jason gets killed, and that's it. That's end. And Joker's like smiling. And it's like, yeah, I guess I can take that implication of, okay, Robin gets killed and Batman just calls it quits. But I would have liked to seen the fall of that. I would have liked to seen a conversation with Alfred. I would have liked to seen... Because Joker obviously is in jail in The Dark Knight Returns, so I would have liked to seen Batman be the one to track him down, or if Joker just gave himself up. I would like to see a conversation, like I said, between Bruce and Selena. Again, I'd like to see him taking that physical step, an emotional step, be like, you know what, I can't be Batman. Because why? I feel like that would motivate him more to be Batman. There is little stuff throughout the story. There's like Mums Against Batman organization going on, stuff like that, but not enough. It doesn't feel worn. It feels like I still have to fill in a lot of the gaps. And it's a cool read. It's a cool... it'd be a really, really, really good read if this was like a 1 of 4. Because if this happened, there was 3 more, I'd be like, man, this is going to be fucking cool. But it's just kind of like, oh yeah, that was good, but nothing that lasts with me. Nothing like, oh man, that's why this all happened. You know, like I said, any holes that were left unanswered from Dark Knight Returns that you wanted. And I never felt that I needed a prequel to Dark Knight Returns, because I felt like I could use my imagination for that. But if they were gonna do it, I want them to answer it fully. And they don't really. You know, they get there, it's kind of like they're pushing a wagon up the hill, and then it gets too much and it kind of falls back. But it's like, oh, well, we got that high, right? You know, it's like, no, I want to get apples all the way to the top. You know, I got to make money. But yeah, and then like I said, it has a Death in the Family sort of vibe. And it's like, well, I've been there before. You know, with Jason Todd, like, getting killed, it's like, that's not a huge, like, oh man, that's why. It's like, I've seen this happen before. So I didn't feel like it tread on enough new ground to be amazing, and it left too many unanswered things to be also amazing. You know, there's no way, and I'd say this is good, and I'm going to give it a 7. Very good. They're good at writing, both of them. Art's good, and it's good to be in that Frank Miller world again, The Dark Knight Returns. I don't like All-Star Batman, but Dark Knight Returns world is great. But I really could have not read this and not felt any more. Or felt that I had missed anything, you know? And I give it a 7. You know, you might think that's high, but like I said, because when I read it, it is still good. It's very good quality, but it's not, I think, what you're expecting. And obviously, if you're listening to this and you've probably read reviews and you haven't read it yet, going with lower expectations, just going that, knowing that it's not going to answer everything in the world. And not necessarily that I wanted everything answered, but it just feels like nothing is really answered. You know, just like, okay, Robin gets killed and Batman stops. It's like, but why? Like, what's his motivation? You know, and I understand it's a pain, but then I would have liked to seen that, of a combination of the rage, Maybe he goes over the line. Maybe it is just the pain. Maybe that mother's organization does power him down, and the public, like Watchmen, want him out. Like, he doesn't really even have... I don't think he has a scene with Gordon. So sorry if I'm wrong. Maybe he had like a throwaway talking to the cops, but nothing of note. You know, nothing that I could... If it did happen, I didn't remember it, you know, but I don't think it did, and that to me is a big thing, because I love their scene in The Dark Knight Returns, like the scenes they do have. So it's a 7. It's still good. I felt very like it was very lackluster, and I was kind of disappointed with it, you know, like I expected a lot more, and I didn't get it. And it's a shame, because it's a huge comic for one of the biggest comics of all time. So like I said, I could be wrong. Maybe there is an issue I haven't heard about. I just thought I had heard that's just going to be the one. And if that's the case, then it's a very meh one, you know? Read it if you like Batman. Read it if you like the Frank Miller, all his runs, especially if you like Dark Knight Returns. Like I said, it's cool to be back in the world. But if you never end up reading it, you're not going to be missing out. You're not going to... It's not going to... I don't think it's going to make anyone's best of at the end of the year, you know? So that was the top comic books of June 2016 with Travis Snail. Yeah, like I said, I'm hoping to do this next month. Let me know if you like this, whether it's in the comments, I'm going to have this on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, all the other podcasts where they're at. Check out all the casts we have. We have a lot of good casts. Like I was saying with comic books right now, there's a cast out there for everybody, I feel like. And if there's not, we're working on it. We're working on different shows. We have different ideas. It's just always time and resources, but Netflix and Fail, that's a lot of fun. Rant, Rate, Repeat is a lot of fun if you want to get to know certain people from the cast more than just like our personalities on air, like just stuff in our life. Netflix and Fail, if you want to know, it's a show where we watch stuff that's on my Netflix that's under 2.5 and see if it actually deserves a failing thing. It's lots of fun. They're short. They're nice little like appetizer. Dynamic Duo, this one right here. We do superhero roundup at the beginning every month. We do specials, things like that. Me, myself, and Liam and Kyle. Me, and myself, and I, apparently. And then Geese Creed, that's a new one up. I think Taylor's going to be doing that bi-monthly, so every second month. If you like Assassin's Creed, check it out. And even if you're not, you should. Taylor is really passionate about what he does, and he really likes Assassin's Creed. Obviously, you want to do that, but I would check it out. And then the last one's GeekVerse. We do that every Saturday. Maybe it's sometimes a day earlier in the summer because there's some big news we want to talk about. But every Saturday, that our podcast is going to be up. So check that out. Please subscribe. Please rate us anywhere, whether it's YouTube, iTunes, SoundCloud, anywhere. Like, tell us. We're always looking for all our shows. We love fan feedback. We talk about all the time. You wouldn't know because they send us message, but like, talk to any person. We don't ignore it. Even if it's somebody, we've had many people say like, oh, I've been called a retard before, and I still respond to that person in a nicely fashion because like, I want to talk to people about this, you know, and that's what this is. Conversations. This is just a conversation with myself. So, things I do lots of times anyways. Oh, and then I don't think I got anything else to plug. Comic-Con, we got a lot of good Dynamic Duo stuff. It's July, so Comic-Con month. The big thing to check out is that the end of the month, right before Comic-Con, we're doing a ranking of the best Marvel and DC films, and by that we're going to rank every single one. It might be a little long, but I think it's going to be worth it. Check out our top 25 performances. It's very similar. It's going to be lots of fun. It's going to be myself, Liam, Kyle, lots of personalities in there. It's a good time. So thank you very much for listening to any podcast in the past, whether it's this one or anyone else. And the next time you hear from me or myself and I promise it will not be boring. Thank you very much.